everybody? Welcome to this special edition of the Yours Truly podcast. I'm Christian Baxter, your host tonight. Let me know if you can hear out there in the comments so that I can make sure that everything's being heard. Let's see. Can I get a sound check? Can you hear? Let's see. I'm waiting for the can hear. Thank you, Brian of College Station. All right. I'm going to introduce tonight. So here we go. When I've talked to young men who have been deeply shaped by internet and digital cultures, namely young millennials and Gen Z, there is a whole world that normies would likely find hard to comprehend, but that's beginning to be seen and felt in certain platforms. With the recent platforming of Nick Fuentes, and from what I see in the young Christian apologetic blood sport culture, there's a world coming that many people will not recognize as the Gen Z digital lions eat the millennial and Gen X foxes for lunch. At one point, I believe President Foxman, who will be in the roundtable tonight, told me I was giving major youth pastor vibes in the TLC, and I honestly take that cringe reality and just own it. I will never be the internet's pastor, but there's a chance I might be an internet YouTube youth pastor. I have become friends with some of these young men in this little corner of the internet and take seriously their views and concerns related to the culture and specifically their experiences, having been formed for better and worse in the deep and darker places of the internet. Tonight, we will be discussing the assassination of Charlie Kirk, an intense topic, but as the alleged gunman was barely in his 20s, I want to get the perspective from young men about how this historical event has affected and shaped them. And I also want to offer a place in this corner of the internet to look at this even squarely, but also with the wisdom that has come from having now lived in this hybrid reality of the physical and digital worlds as we meet here on YouTube and X. This is a Zoomer Roundtable reunion. A few months ago, I had these guys on, Joseph, Afriel, and Noah, President Foxman. And then when we went to Midwest Estuary just a few weeks ago, we had a brief reunion in person, in meat space, in the flesh. And so this will be a third meeting of this crew to discuss this very intense and present historical moment. I'm ready to kick off this live edition of Christian Baxter, Yours Truly. So I won't be opening, and I want to just lay a few ground rules tonight. We're going to be pretty focused on the conversation and not the chat for about the first 45 minutes. And then after that, we're going to open up to respond to questions, but we're not going to open up the stream tonight. So that's going to kind of be the ground rules for our discussion this evening. So with that said, without any further delay, I give you the Zoomer Roundtable. Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud. Gentlemen, oh man,
Hello.
I'm gonna get us our names in here just so people can kind of keep up with the stuff.
There we go.
That's happening. All right. So we got Joseph, Afriel, President Foxman. I think we're in the same. Yeah, we're in the same order here too as our last one.
There you go.
So I think that's good. Feng shui. Yeah, and let's see. I'm just gonna go ahead and Joseph, was there something you were wanting to do that I forgot but I guess we kind of got backwards on getting everybody in here and stuff. I don't know.
No, it's all good.
Okay.
I guess if you just want to jump into it,
yeah, we'll just get going.
I think just to kind of set the stage, discussion about this and sense making about this has been a bit difficult because it's for a lot of people, it's kind of been this really potent, visceral event that has taken place, and it's no coincidence, I guess, that it's right around 9/11, and it's this national tragedy for a number of reasons. Not simply over the death of one man, as tragic as that is, but just of all of the milieu we find ourselves in kind of the aftermath of the event. But it's kind of like if 9/11 happened and you couldn't talk about 9/11. It's kind of similar to when, President, Trump was the assassination attempt. You didn't know who you could talk to about it, kind of. But it was almost this feeling of we all know what's going on, but we don't know who out of the population is abhorred by this and view it as a tragedy, what percentage are indifferent to it, and what percentage of the population are celebrating it. And we've come to find out that there's a very large portion of the population that are mournful over this event, but there's also a huge element of the population that is celebrating it even. And so it's just this really strange thing to navigate when you don't really understand why it's so impactful, and then you can't even talk about it really without stepping on a landmine, I guess.
And so kind of here we are, and I think that's a really good way to set up the conversation tonight. That we need. I mean, even in I guess what you would say was what he promoted as his view on discourse, like, if we don't know who we can even talk to about it, like, what does that do to a culture? What does that do to a people? And so before we kind of, I guess, get into more pointed topics, let's do kind of a small, like a mini rando, but let's just kind of go around and introduce yourself, how you kind of come in contact with this corner of the internet related to, we were all at Midwest Estuary, Paul Vanderklay, downstream from the Peterson phenomenon, and just kind of a short introduction by way, and then also your experience specifically of being raised in the internet. So let's just start with you, Afriel, and then we'll do Foxman, and then we'll go up to Joe's.
Sounds good. So as far as how I came into this little corner, been watching Paul Vanderklay, maybe not right after Peterson came on the scene, but pretty shortly after that. And then was watching him for quite a while, just lurking in the background. Had heard him mention TLC on some streams a bunch, and I'm like, whatever, it's not really too interested in it. And then I started getting this inspiration of like, you know what, I need to start like writing things. I need to start sharing things with people online. And then it was like, hey, you should like look more into this TLC thing. It was just a thought that I had. And so I started looking in, and I was like, oh, this is exactly the kind of people who I've been looking for. Okay. And so I did like a sort of mini rando unplanned with Chad. And then I had a proper rando with you, Christian. And then I've been, I don't want to say an acolyte because that makes it sound like too much of a cult, but I've been following Grizz pretty closely since I came out of the lurk.
Yeah.
And then, started playing games on my own stream like half a year ago now. So that's been a really good time.
And so your relationship of being kind of raised in the internet, can we bring that kind of into that thing? And I'll say why I'm interested in this, because Aaron Wren, I've had on the podcast, he quoted a tweet picture of the alleged assassin from like his 13-year-old birthday from like the Facebook, because it's all, and it was him with his whole like computer thing, and the mom was like, now are you going to see him even less? And he goes, I don't even have words to say about that image.
Mm-hmm.
And he, I think, he's, probably in his 50s. And so this is what I mean by like, it's one thing to like have watched that happen, but it's another thing to have been the person that happened to. So that's kind of the framing I'm thinking related to that. So go ahead, man.
Yep. I wasn't really involved too much in terms of like engaging with other people online directly, like chat rooms and stuff like that. That wasn't really my zone of comfort. But I was definitely heavily influenced by a lot of stuff that was present online. Like, this is gonna maybe date me, but Albino Black Sheep back in the day was a place to get stuff from. Newgrounds as well. And yeah, I wasn't really much of a forum goer, but those were pretty formative in my early years. Like Homestar Runner was another fun one.
I know that one.
And then, yep. And then going on into the future, when I was in college, I started browsing Reddit when it was in its heyday, and that was a pretty formative thing for me as well. The kind of dialogue that was able to happen before the site started to get really, really locked down by the power moderators and admins. But yeah, and then TLC is probably the first major like online community that I've engaged with, just because I'd seen so many things go south so many times that it was just like, I'm just gonna stay back. Like I'll appreciate the fruits of what's coming from the internet, but I'm not gonna necessarily engage with it myself. I just don't see that being valuable. Oh, and one other one that was really impactful for me was Congregate, which was a website where people would post Flash games. And so it was a really good way to play around with a whole bunch of different mechanics without having to spend a ton of money on different games. So,
yeah. Noah.
Yeah. My end kind of came around this space. I don't know, probably a little bit before COVID originally, and then standard kind of watch some Jordan Peterson. Thought it was interesting. Found this Jonathan Peugeot guy. He seemed really interesting and kind of seemed to speak and make connections that I found, captivating or interesting. Connected me to Paul Vanderklay, who kind of continued the work a little bit into, these books that he's reading or things he's seeing in the news or a show that he's watched, and kind of bridging the gap between these things. I think throughout my younger years and up until now, the idea of religion having an impact in all these things, right? That there's a religious element all the way through has been a very impactful idea. And so kind of got into that and ended up starting to make videos because I wanted to have a hobby that I could be like, okay, I'm doing something. So ended up making videos, kind of through that, came out of the lurk, got to meet a lot of you and stuff, and was doing that. And now I'm here. For the growing up online, I think mine's pretty similar to AF's. Like I really wasn't in forum culture or anything. Like this is the first community I think I've been a part of that I'm actively participating in. For the most part, I kind of have stepped back. I never was active on Reddit or anything like that. I was more into playing video games, kind of keeping a small circle of friends that I knew in real life that we would play video games together, maybe online. So in that sense, I've gotten a lot of great things out of it as a like passive lurker. A lot of the major influences on me have come through that, whether that be music I watch or movies I listen to, or other way around. But yeah.
And,
Does that cover?
I was just going to ask, like, exposure to, we talk about Reddit, like, but there are, I mean, there are like, deep, darker corners of the internet that were much darker than the intellectual dark web. And yeah. I'm just wondering, like, you don't have to talk about the specifics of those things, but as we continue, like, would y'all both say that y'all had exposures to those places amongst this journey, being in those spaces?
I knew about stuff, and I knew that it could get a lot worse, but I'm relatively good at saying, you know what, like, I'm going to let that be where it is. I'm going to stick around in my kind of happy little area of the internet and enjoy it, and not kind of dive too deeply into the dark underbelly.
but you know, memes and these things, like they come up, you know, but you kind of, and you know, generally where those things are kind of coming from or whatever.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, like 4chan having like this, like it for a long time, it was the root of all kind of internet culture. Like everything you saw online, you could trace back to kind of like a 4chan thread somewhere. So that was a present reality all through my experience with the internet. It was like, oh, I know that there's a dark underbelly that's kind of brewing, and I'm experiencing the bubbles at the top, but there's something down there that's doing something.
And how long would you say something like that would be germinating there until it hit Facebook or whatever? Like, what was like the lag time culturally? Would you say if it ever even did?
I can let the other two kind of comment, but like
go ahead.
I think it depended, right? If it was a straight attack, or if it was a meme that kind of naturally kind of transferred. If it was natural, it would be like it could be 6 months.
Joseph, go ahead and tell your story, and you can incorporate that into your answer.
Well, yeah, you know, nothing really to say that it hasn't already been said, but I guess kind of my gateway drug to, you know, the dark places that someone like Grim Grizz would hang out in was, you know, I got exposed to Newgrounds and played around there, watched stuff there, talked to people on there. I was real active on early YouTube. Eventually got into Reddit, got into 4chan probably around, I don't know, 2010, and was pretty frequent. I frequented the literature board there quite a bit, the video game board as well, poll occasionally. Never went on B, but I actually then went on and followed a bunch of people that went to 8chan when that whole kerfuffle happened. That's some deep lore. But I guess nowadays I'm not really active anywhere. I lurk. I go around, you know, like a hunter gatherer, you know, just foraging to just get a temperature gauge of the waters. And I guess that's me. I was also pretty active in some Discords prior to, as cringe as that is to say, during like COVID. But anyways, the lag time of meme culture, you know, there's kind of there's kind of different epochs of meme culture that you really could see if you went back like 2008, and it's those kind of like ironic things where it's the bold impact text, or it's even making fun of like those inspirational office posters that you'd say like courage, and then it would say something here in stock photo. So there was some of that, you know, that bold impact, like the Bear Grylls, oh, you know, forgot my water bottle, oh, better drink my own pee or something, you know, that kind of really stupid stuff that was like what people were first exposed to as memes, or like rage comics, you know, from like iFunny, you know, those did have some origin in 4chan, very like 2006-7, pretty ancient stuff. But you know, there, you know, Pepe and Wojak, they've been around forever. But we noticed that, you know, some of these figures like Pepe, for example, Pepe emerged from the underbelly around the Trump election, and he's kind of been replaced in saliency by the Wojak, the white guy that can be, you know, interchangeably, you know, positioned. And so all I'm trying to say is that it's a difficult, there's not a fixed variable, I think, that you can say this is the delta of time between 4chan and Facebook. And these communities have become very siloed too. And that has dried up these ecosystems where it used to be kind of like a spring of water that, you know, I think the internet was a lot healthier when it was this kind of circulatory system almost. But I don't know. I'm doing a lot of talking.
Well, I think there was a lot of good. And I think what's interesting is, if, you know, when I only can like every third like thing, or every fourth or fifth thing that you mention of like, what the hell's B? I think that's really helpful for people to hear how much they don't know. And when you guys are like, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, those were the good old days. You know, like, it's important to know how much we don't know about something, to grasp why, I know I know Noah wrote about this. He has a great Substack piece that he wrote about the other day related to the topic. Joseph and I have talked about this. We talked on the phone. I don't know if we mentioned this, but I've been waking up at like 3:00 in the morning, almost all week. If that has been common. So, and that's, what is that? And why, Joseph brought up kind of, I'll call it algorithmic siloing that we're also, and, can also now with, when Elon bought X, there was the exodus to Threads and to Blue, what is it called? Blue Sky. And then now there's a little more also platform, just people aren't, and it feeds into this discourse disconnect. And I think that is a big thing of what we're seeing. That was brought up, Joseph's initial comment about who do you talk to about this and how. And one of the things about coming on here in a public forum like YouTube, and exposing yourself for wherever on some kind of gradient you land on this. And that's the thing that I think is going to be interesting, because I know I was deeply impacted by this assassination emotionally. It was very saddening and very upsetting for me. And, I don't know, what I think I want to start to this point, as y'all have kind of outlined kind of your background and your stories, is what were your thoughts about Charlie Kirk before he was assassinated? What was y'all's view, just in general, of him, and kind of why it was and the way it was?
So I'll have a very, I'm not trying to be, the spotlight. I'll have a unique perspective. I want the other two guys to go first, I guess.
Yeah, you guys go ahead. Let's just hit Af and Noah. We'll just do it that way again.
Just keep it round robin. So my impression was that he was pretty middle of the road conservative, and that I wasn't a huge fan of the debate me bro style that he had. The whole point of why I'm participating in Estuary and not the sort of blood sports rhetoric that you see in other circles is because I don't think that that's terribly productive. At least not relative to having genuine conversations where you're trying to reach across the aisle and help to show each other that, oh, hey, we're human beings and we want the same things. We're just disagreeing about how to go about accomplishing those same things. So I not a huge fan. My dad was definitely much more into the blood sports aspect of it, which is I don't know. That's just not my cup of tea. That was my thoughts beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I won't go too far back, but my story goes from, initially kind of being put down this path towards TLC from watching Ravi Zacharias, watching his stuff. And, he is he was very rhetorically skilled. And so that got me into kind of looking into these debates around kind of where politics and religion meet. But that was before Charlie Kirk was kind of prominent or even kind of doing anything in the public. So I ran into Ben Shapiro doing his debates over abortion and things like this. And, that sustained me for a little bit. And then I realized that there's a point where it's politics can only get you so far, where Paul says, religion is dollars and politics is cents. There's a certain point where it's okay, you kind of have to dig into the deeper things, and you can't have an argument up here without having agreement down here and have it be productive. And so it just kind of pointed me towards, this isn't it. And so Jordan Peterson was the one who kind of was hey, I'm starting to move towards the religion stuff. And then I kind of went deeper in from there. So I kind of went religion, politics, then back to religion again. And that's kind of been my path. So I really haven't run into him too much. I've kind of seen him around, and I kind of associated him with, that's the Ben Shapiro type thing. That's the you know, the joint coming in off screen and the glasses coming down, destroying college student kind of thing.
Own the libs, own them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you hear someone like Trump or any pundit, that is just saying that, Charlie had this amazing impact on young people, like more so than anyone, I would be a little dubious of claims like that, because when Charlie Kirk like really emerged on the scene, he was kind of following this, I guess, tradition, if you will, of this kind of YouTube
Steven
debate
Crowder
thing.
Steven
Well,
Crowder.
yeah. Well, and before that, you had Ben Shapiro and Milo Yiannopoulos that would go to the college campuses, and this thing got really popular, like around the, leading up to the Trump election. You had the Gamergate stuff that really threw gasoline on this, and so there was a lot of attention and a lot of excitement over this stuff, but it got old pretty quickly. Like YouTube poops were like lasted longer in terms of relevancy as than these things. And YouTube poops are like these schizophrenic YouTube edits that were, anyways. So Charlie Kirk kind of was like a late adopter, if you will, to this model, and that's not to downplay what he built or anything. I'm just saying that this image that people are painting of him being this grand father figure, what I think that people were attracted to Charlie was kind of like what he represented. People looked at him that were like not too, that were kind of like normies, that weren't really on fire about anything and just kind of drifting. And I think the Jordan Peterson stuff seized a lot of people that were already fed up with this whole scene. But those people that continued to be intrigued by what Charlie or Crowder or whatever all these other guys were doing, I think these were more normal people that were just waking up to realizing that they have agency over the world and need to be serious about things. And they saw Charlie as somebody who is, he's this, he works out, he's tall, he's put together. There's like this ideal that you see in him as like an ideal citizen, and like that he was like a convincing citizen, like as a citizen, as in the sense you weren't just born into this country, but in the classical sense that if you were dropped on an island, the civilization could continue because there was a citizen there who was instilled in the values and the structuring and all those dirty details, I guess. But all this is to say is I was really familiarized with Charlie during the Groyper Wars. And that was when Nick Fuentes really kind of, I guess, first popped off, was that he would send his Groypers, which, by the way, he appropriated that term. That's a whole nother story. The Groypers used to be a peaceful sub colony online that like shared bug photos. And that's the thing about someone like Nick Fuentes is over Charlie Kirk, is Nick Fuentes had a real, I think, keen temperature on internet culture, where Charlie Kirk was really keen on, I'm going to go after the normies at the schools because that's
popular culture.
Yes, right. And it was effective. It was effective, although it could get pretty stale. And I think that's why, if you look at streaming numbers, someone like Hassan Piker, he would have, 80,000 viewers. However many of those are bots, who's to know? But that's why you'd have that many guys following Hassan Piker's stream, and you'd have Charlie Kirk, and I would imagine a large demographic of his viewership was more elderly or boomers, Gen Xers that were really just looking to own the libs because they have family members or colleagues that they struggle with these things. But okay, I'm rambling, but I guess what I'm just trying to get at is there's always been this tension between on the right, I guess, from what I've seen, of the kind of normie conservative Charlie Kirks and the more radical, if you will. I hate even using that word now because it's being thrown around so much, but the genuinely more, I guess, vitalistic right that wants to see a return to Christendom, wants to destroy the cultural, nihilism that's taking over and all those sorts of things. So I guess I've had a long history with Charlie, and I can appreciate what he did, but I wasn't a devotee, and I think there was a lot more people that were grabbing the attention of Gen Z, and it was probably more on the left side of things, I would imagine.
I'll go ahead and give my kind of take on this, which was, my path was like Shapiro, Tim Pool, Rogan, like IDW. That I was much more looking, I didn't like I've said there was many things that I didn't know was going on. Like I'd hear like Gamergate, I saw Dave Rubin interview Sargon, and but I didn't really have great context for that. But when I kind of like emotionally broke in 2020 over politics, basically with COVID and everything else. I came back on Twitter after not being on Twitter for like 3 years at that time. And it kind of, effed me up. And with all those players, like we were talking about, and so like, I watched a lot of the, Change My Mind Crowder. I watched a lot of Ben Shapiro at that time. And then like the stuff that started, like we've all kind of talked about this kind of, I call it kind of the meaning layer of Peterson that kind of gets you down into the more existential realities as opposed to kind of only the political realities. But so when and during that time, I know I was watching like Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk. They basically started together. And I remember watching some of her initial, events that she was doing related to like BLM and all that kind of stuff. And, and all these people that I've named have all had all these kind of trajectories. And there was like a season where they were all much more kind of in their own version of millennial normie, Gen X normie and stuff. And then they've kind of done these things. And become either more mainstream or more intensely conspiratorial or all those kinds of things. But Charlie Kirk kind of like held this, I don't know, the mainstream thing. And like his views were just like, basically what's crazy is like his platform minus abortion was like Obama's platform in 2008. That's the wildest thing. And so now for me, that's not that long ago. That was a present reality of a presidential vote and all that kind of stuff. But to be murdered for that platform, basically, I think is a little bit of why I think that it was so visceral. And I think that like Joseph was saying, like he just kind of like represented that thing. And if that thing is being that, and again, like, are there critiques to be made? Did he react poorly or say something that he might have regretted? Or maybe he still believed that is wrong or offensive to somebody, likely, and I think the other way that I look at the situation is, he was killed at 31 and he started doing this stuff when he was 18. And, you can take the interesting thing that I think would be to look at like whatever quote you want to pull to justify your position on whatever you thought about him. It would be interesting to look at like, if that was a quote from when he was 21 or was that a quote from when he was 31? And then again, back to Joseph's point, and I was having this conversation with my wife, but like algorithmic siloing, I'm not unsusceptible to be like, I basically all saw all this positive stuff about him. And if you're on another place, you're basically only seeing his worst moments. And if they feed into your biases or your deeply held beliefs, which are sometimes called biases, that's intense. And we're living in a world where we don't know how to even now have that conversation. If you're not like, we're probably in like all four of us are in some similar version of, on a spectrum. How do we even have that thing? And he was, for better or for worse, for ill or for better, in my opinion, he was meeting those silos. Like he was creating a nexus point for those silos. And that's just very intense. I don't know. I just want to open it up now to you guys, just kind of for discourse related to, well, I mean, did you lose sleep? And why do you think you lost sleep?
I didn't lose sleep, but I had a really hard time focusing at work, like almost completely unable to do anything productive. And I think that, just to respond to Joseph real quick, I think that the thing that Kirk had that going for him was the amount of community organization that he was doing was miles ahead of, I think, anybody else.
Totally.
Turning Point USA may not have won Trump the presidency, but it certainly contributed to it for this last election round. Sorry, Christian, can you repeat your question again?
Yeah, like why do you think you weren't able to focus? Why do you think you weren't able to focus?
Because I said it on my stream yesterday. They killed the moderate. Like I don't like. There's a lot of people who are on the left who are either straw manning, taking quotes out of context, or maybe finding particular things that other people find objectionable that he said, and then using that to justify what happened. And what I don't think people are realizing is that there are a whole lot of people who are looking at that and saying, I hold those views.
Yeah.
I hold maybe even in some cases a little bit more extreme of views than he did. And I wasn't really wanting to call for the death of anybody. And there's a wave of people who are calling, not just celebrating Kirk's death, but saying things like Trump next or Tucker next. And it's like, oh, this wasn't hyperbole. Because there were a lot of people, I think, who have been online who understood that it was not hyperbole, that they were just looking for an opportunity. But there were also a lot of people on the right who did not think that was the case, who thought it was just a fringe, a hyperbolic fringe. And when it manifests itself in reality in a way that you cannot ignore,
yeah. What views got him killed? Was it his fiscal views, his conservative fiscal policy? Was it his,
he said you should stone the gays?
Yeah. We all know what killed him. It was his social views, and that's derived from his Christian upbringing. I mean, it was explicitly a trans related advocacy thing that it was on the bullet, for crying out loud. I think that's the real question that everyone has to ask is, are we comfortable with a considerable portion of the population that's celebrating this, while at the same time affirming, the age-old scriptural reality of every culture ever, that in the beginning, God created them, man and woman, in the image of God, he created them. Holding that is going to be enough of a casus belli to blow your brains out, I guess, now.
I think
Noah.
Yeah, I think going back to a little bit what we were talking about too is that another piece that distinguished Kirk from a Crowder or a Shapiro or some of these people, and there's different levels of this, but it's he came across as somewhat good faith. It seems like there was a certain level of especially Crowder, I think, is one of these people who are like, I don't have any trust that he has any good faith in this. Like this is
a comedian.
Yeah. But there is a certain sense in which Kirk honestly seemed like the ideal situation would be this person would see the errors of their ways and and kind of correct themselves, whether that was right or not. Like that seemed to be where he was going with it. And like Af was saying, like that there's like an extreme moderateness to this, like that it was very, I don't know, this is he's the most kind of centrist, prominent, like conservative-ish figure, and you know, that was the one who was targeted, which is just kind of beyond understanding.
Because those places we've talked about the deep internet, you see real bigotry and real hatred and real racism, like just celebrated, you know? And that's not really how he engaged in much of those conversations. And so I think that would be why there's some lost sleep, you know, because it's like, well, but he was, I do think he was very winsome from things that I've seen, because when I would see, like, I think pre-assassination, I would just kind of be like, moral majority, kind of like your standard political evangelical doing some lip service. But there are some things that I have seen that is just actually not like, and since then some of the stuff was not lip service. Like it just came from a place that didn't seem like that was the case. And of course, it's video. I don't know his life, but that was I think difficult. That was difficult to see after the fact, that much more kind of nuts and bolts. And when you see somebody like Robert Barron talking like what he tweeted about, you know, you have a Catholic bishop talking about this young man's Christianity. And then I know that Father Josiah Trenum had a conversation with Gavin Ortland, and it was all in light. It was on September 11th. It was all in light of this. And there is like a grief that, in a sense, in the last zillennial conversation that we had, and Joseph was a part of that, and we were talking about like what are we all, whatever that means, like looking at, and then you like look at somebody else and you say, I think I saw that he was looking at that too.
Right.
And I think that's what that felt like, even for men that are, you know, pushing 60 and see this, you know, which, you know, maybe for our kind of final conversation, which we've kind of said, like when I was at Midwest Estuary, and I don't remember if Noah was right next to me. I think you were. And I said this in that other conversation, but I was like listening to the conversations about AI, and I was just like, you know, it's very different developmentally to be brought up in a technocratic reality. And we now have a generation of people that have been brought up that way. And I can't even really, in a sense, like video games, yes, but most of my stuff, like I didn't play even a LAN party till I was in college. And then, you know, there was some stuff, but like there's just a different sensibility and a different psyche development that I think is unique to the Gen Z experience in that way. And you know, say somebody is 60 and they hop on Twitter for the first time, and they're just inundated with meme and inundated with real meme stuff, you know, or you know, whatever TikToks, whatever we call them, and like they have no filter for, especially now with AI, they have no filter for even wrestling with that. It's just an onslaught. What are some like encouragements to people that are finding themselves that you've had to like figure out, maybe even difficultly with great difficulty along this way, that you guys would maybe share through those experiences? Because in our first roundtable, I called you guys the oldest generation, because of like how the speed in which like the digital epics happened, and I've lived through. Joseph was like, I've lived through like 3 epics online. You know, I don't know. Let's go there, and then we'll open up for some questions.
Yeah, well, if I could just jump in real quick, I guess the thing that just it's kind of like there's 2 great parallels here between Charlie Kirk and the man who shot him. They went about identifying a problem and a solution in completely different ways. And for one who is chronically online, the thing about being chronically online is you develop this sort of lived experience of the world you're in, and especially if it's like a very politically orientated thing, that such as the Reddit account he was on and the Discord servers he was in. These are very specific visions of the world and evils of the world that need to be conquered. And I think when you're terminally online, you're just surrounded by this chatter. It's these words that are just always, it's like how ancient Christians understood demons as just putting a little whispers in your ears. It's like that manifold by 1,000, because it's just all these different nameless faces that are communicating with you, and you're doing this collective sense making. And I think the solution to it is to never, it's a Christian solution. It's to never give in to despair, never give in to the idea that, the ends justify the mean, never lose. You have to truly hold on to the idea of the dignity of each individual human. You have to maintain the image of God and the other. That doesn't mean you need to forget all these things and move on and be mindless to the evils that occurred. But I think it's really in not giving into the black pill, and you do that by holding on to the true faith of Jesus Christ. You hold on to the dignity of man, and that the eschaton is already sorted out. You don't need to bring about, you don't need to bring the workers of the world together to bring that utopia. It's going to come.
Any other thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I think in my mind, I forgot the question, but I'll just talk.
Talk.
For a lot of the people who kind of fall down these rabbit holes, like whatever direction it ends up being, just the radicalization, if you want to use that word, a lot of times it's a medicine for an illness that they're trying to address, right? It's them trying to they feel disconnected from where they are locally. They don't feel connected, and so they try to find a place where they do feel connected, and then that pulls them in. It takes advantage of this loneliness, this separation they have from community. And it's bizarre, but it's like the solution to a certain extent is like getting offline. Like, strangely enough, like taking the poison actually makes you better, even though you think it's to cure a disease, but maybe actually just experiencing that for a second might be part of the solution. Maybe like feeling lonely for a little bit, it will actually maybe help you find real connections. And so it's constantly trying to find that balance of I don't know. There's been this tweet that's been stuck in my brain, and it's the meme where it's like the online women or I guess it's men and women, and they're both going different directions of the political spectrum. Like all the men are going to the right and the women are going to the left. And then there's this like solution that's provided by this person that in the middle, like those are the online sides, and then the middle is the offline men and women who are kind of going back and forth upward. And somebody retweeted that, and they or quote tweeted it and said, there's no such thing as being offline. Like, being online is real life. that even not 80-year-old grandmothers are watching cat videos on TikTok. And like, that's not true. Like you are terminally online if you think that's true. Like you need to like meet an old person, and you need to like be offline if that's your outlook. And it's this weird sense in which you think you're being more connected to the world by entering the internet, but you're actually diving into yourself more. You're cutting yourself off. Like you think this is a connection to the outside. It's not. There's good things that can come from it, right? I think the internet's an amazing tool, but it's not your connection. It's not how you do that. But
Well,
I
yeah,
say that
did
as
you-
a person who's made friends on the internet, so like take that with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
It connects you across geographical distances, but it's up to you. Like, are you going to allow yourself to be siloed, or are you going to deliberately try and engage and see what other people are saying? Like, one of the things that I really wanted to bring up at some point was like, a lot of times with like any conflict, it is always to your advantage to be the defender when it comes to being able to call on resources from other people. And as a consequence of that, everyone is incentivized to try and portray themselves as the defender. That's where the idea of Darbo comes from, of deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. That's the whole point of that. And so you have to understand that pretty much in every case, you're going to have one person who is trying to say they are the defender, and the other person trying to say they are the defender. And one of them is the real defender, and one of them is the offender who is trying to portray themselves as the defender. And you have to use discernment to try and figure out which is which. And sometimes both of them are the offender, and nobody is innocent. There's blood on everyone's hands. But you have to understand that that's what you're getting into, rather than just believing whatever side you were already inclined to agree with, whatever side you were already siloed into, that their defensive arguments are airtight and that they are clearly the ones who are the defenders in a particular conflict.
Appreciate that, guys. So I'm going to move in. I was scrolling through the comments a little bit ago, and I'm going to bring in this one from Lance, because I think this is something that we didn't actually look at. This is more of a comment than it is a question. TPUSA is a $100 million annual company with 1,000 employees. Charlie built grassroots machine bigger than the RNC and the Republican elite. He came out of the Tea Party. And as we haven't talked about, like, there's sometimes a false equivalency of what takes place with, like, well, what about those people that got killed? The whataboutisms of the people that got killed. And it's like, what about them? Aren't they as important as Charlie Kirk? Yes. In a human reality and even in a spiritual reality, yes. But there's not denying that this guy, like, he's like a once in a generation talent about something. You can't, like, that's not easy. Not only did he just do that and he raised money and he was running all these things, like, he basically had the president on speed dial. And so you kind of have to, like, there is also, he represented this normie thing, but he was also an actual, like, he was incredibly politically powerful. Mm-hmm. And so that's also, you know, whether it's just that he was, you know, killed for something that he believed as a core value, also tied to the fact that he was an actual force in the world as a person. And so, like, and Joseph, you alluded to that with, like, his kind of Renaissance man reality of being able, like, he could see the civilization, you know, like, and I think he really was broadly read. And Lance also brought up a point about him being, you know, having read Matt's meaning, and, you know, obviously was on tons of podcasts with Peterson and everybody else. But I just think that's worth stating, is not just like, did he appeal to deep internet culture people? No. And that was kind of the point of this podcast, was to actually kind of get that perspective. But I also want to get the perspective that I think he somewhat, you know, on my conversation with Jordan Hall on the night of the evening of the live stream, the brief live stream we did. There's some comments from people that are in this corner that literally were brought out of nihilism because of Turning Point USA, and it took them down this path. And then there's also a grandfather, and this is also the thing that was so fascinating about his conversation with Gavin Newsom. There's a grandfather in that text in the comments of that video I did that said, my grandchildren who are 20 or whatever, they send me Charlie Hall TikToks all the time. So there is like some empiricalness to his.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I'm not trying to diminish any of that, but yeah.
But it didn't speak to a deeper thing that I think is where some of the anxiety comes from, like knowing where the real, you don't like the real, feels like real evil lies on the right or something. But the other part about that is I saw a tweet that was something like, Charlie wasn't necessarily even talking like and this is probably what goes into like why there is a true effectiveness to what the rhetoric does. Like Noah, you were talking about Ravi Zacharias earlier, and like I watched a lot of him a long time ago. I watched a lot of the theistic evolution debates and all these kinds of things that were in that as well. And he was a skilled rhetorician. He grew and became a better rhetorician. And it wasn't so much if he was going to convince that person that was right in front of him, but he knew, and probably the whole thing was like, but this likely, and it is in some ways convincing somebody else. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that's all of that's worth noting in the conversation.
But,
I'm going to look at the comments. You guys take it from there.
I was going to say in one way, and I can, this will be a quick point, but that Charlie in a lot of ways was also pointing out, I think, what I was trying to point out here too, which was that there is this terminally onlineness to the university campus, that there is this kind of very insular state of it, and kind of pointing it out and saying like, hey everyone, this is what this is like there is a certain level of like people are kind of being siloed actively, and yeah, that was part of it. To whose benefit, you can argue, but
one thing I just got to chime in real quick. Sorry, is that the reason why I think what I was trying to speak to is like this disproportionate interest of older folks and when I say older folks, I just mean older than Gen Z, to hone in on Charlie, is he kept alive this kind of I guess this faith of the post-war consensus that anything could be resolved through peaceful dialogue, and just kind of akin to, I don't know, like a facts and logic can be met, and we can set aside our differences and use facts and logic to arrive at the right conclusion. But I think his death, his murder is kind of symbolic in that we really are entering into a new age where there's a lot of people that don't really believe in that anymore, or haven't believed in that for quite some time. And that, for example, you aren't going to be able to sit down with somebody who identifies as trans and use facts and logic to basically devalidate their perceived existence and their perceived reality. And so I just really see his death as kind of a marker of this transition away from this civil society where we could talk through whatever political issue and come to some sort of agreement, some sort of compromise. But we're reaching very core, fundamental ontological issues that are just going to be resolved from, my values can't agree with that on both sides. We'll say that, right?
One of the things that's been fascinating to me, and this is kind of moving into the post assassination, because I think everybody's likely algos were just like filled with Kirkisms, just like, and I was curious about, it seems like he had some kind of religious experience that his message went, like Joseph, you're talking about, to a deeper, more ground of being a place, like an ontological place, going to that religious line, which would differentiate again, like what the difference between him and like Crowder's Changed My Mind was on the good stuff. If you're seeing nice Charlie, it was like, wow, this guy's being patient. This guy's being kind to this person who's very distressed, who even is admitting deep psychological distress in some of those situations. And then many times, like, he shared the gospel in many of these situations that I was completely unaware of. I would, like I said, I kind of saw it as like lip service, like early Turning Point USA. I don't know if you guys, and I would be interested if people in the comments know much about, like, if he had a more recent religious turn in his engagement. Yeah, here's Bob Briggs saying, who's one of those comments that I was talking about his grandkids sending him Charlie Kirk stuff, was he made it cool to believe in Christ. Zoomers wanted a Bible to read because of him. It's possible. And, you know, and if he's got his empirical evidence of his grandkids, and then you hear the stuff like, I don't know who was saying, somebody told somebody I knew or something that my mom had a friend who's a private teacher for a young man. And he said, Miss So-and-so, I listened to Charlie's podcast every morning. This kid was 13 or 14. And so there's also like maybe an alpha component
Sure, yeah.
to this.
I think Bob's right on the money, though, that that's what it was about. It was restoring confidence. It will, instead of saying making it look cool, restoring confidence in, you know, talking about the Bible or something, or restoring confidence, making it look cool to be married with kids. I mean, that is something that young men are deeply moving towards, is this longing, this ideal of being married with children. And he was kind of an icon of that, I guess, for a lot of people.
Let's see. Zepp says he did turn more religious later on. He was more focused on politics early. After marriage and children, he came back to faith issues. Okay. So obviously that's a huge turning point in your life, you know, for lack of a better word at the moment, is that, and it should be, hopefully. Sometimes it's not. Yeah, I think post-marriage, Charlie was a completely different Charlie. That's fascinating. So there was a new responsibility that changed his message from one that was maybe more individual to one that was more outward facing. Have you guys scrolled some of the comments? Are there points in here that you thought you might be wanted to respond to a little bit? Just
I'm on my phone, so whatever you want to serve up to us, I'm good with.
All right. Yeah, guys, is there a point, I'm looking at the comments, that y'all are interested in some feedback on in this conversation?
There's a lot we didn't address, so it's understandable if something gets brought up.
Zep says, my hope is due to their experience, Gen Z will be the ones who sort out a sea of irrelevance online. So like being able to identify salience, at least in our TLC parlance, I think that's because we're moving into the age of slop anyways. Like,
yeah, Zoomers pick up on slop way better, I think, right? Like, guys, if I showed you a boomer AI slop post from Facebook, you'd immediately say, no, thank you, I'm full. Like, I don't need that.
Well,
I choose my slop carefully.
Maybe ironically, but
yeah.
But
this is something we've said, so does the facts and logic thing flip the middle? Like, is it that moderate? Is that the thing? If you're like maybe not emotionally invested or something, I don't know. What was my take on the election, because I think he obviously played one, but my focus was on these last minute giant podcasts that the president and the vice president went on, and it was like, human or not human?
Right.
Like, is this you making these things, or is this like the Fox? And this is kind of goes to that Fox Lion paradigm that, the corner has gone back on, that Paul's poked at, but it's like, is this really just a dude being a dude to a greater or lesser degree, even though obviously there's politics at play? And then another candidate just not even really doing like one podcast.
Oh yeah, Kamala went on like a sex podcast, and the other guys went on Joe Rogan. I mean, there you go. Like, what's going to grab more attention?
Yeah, and turning that down to some degree, even though there's arguments to be made on that. But let's see, Ezekiel, which I think he was saying something. Millennials are sentimental and cringe. Look at my wall, guys. I've got memorabilia up on from all my sentimental journey in this space.
I noticed the Midwestuary edition. It's good.
Yeah.
Dude, Gen Z wants to find Atlantis, dude. We want to go reclaim. We want to go past the ice wall. We want to go to Agartha, dude. We want to reactivate the portals. We want to know about the Finno-Korean hyper war. We're not interested in that crap.
I think one bit of it too is like, I work with a lot of millennials, and it's not among everybody, right? Because they're people who are different and who are exceptions to the rule. But I can't tell you how many people I talk to who say, in one sense or another, I have no interest in ever having children, or children seem like they're too much trouble, or they're kind of a drag, and they're reaching their mid-30s, early 30s, and I don't see that changing within the next 5 years really quickly. And I think their time is running out to a certain extent. If you're this far against it, I don't know if it's going to change. So that's kind of answering Matt's question here, but like I see that, whereas I see that sentiment among Zoomers as well, but it's much more diverse. I think there is this kind of major split going on where there are a significant number of Gen Z people who are becoming religious explicitly, joining the Orthodox Church.
No, you're right on the money. It's like, are you going to be a dink, or are you going to have are you going to be a new patriarch or a matriarch of a new family line? And that's like, just as Gen Alpha, it's going to be, are you the brain rot kid with the iPad, or did your parents keep that away? Our generation is going to be defined by, did you intentionally have children, or if you weren't able to, whatever.
Yeah.
Or were you a dink
or adopt, or like there's like that like the, I don't know, and the dink stuff kind of comes back to that like lifestyle bloat kind of culture that's come out of this too, where there are a lot of people who are like, I might not be able to afford Netflix if I have kids. I might like,
This is interesting. I don't know, Taryn. No, she commented, no question, but listening to this conversation that has been deeply informative as to what my peers are experiencing and how much Charlie meant, I think I may be able to talk to them about this now. Wow, that's very meaningful. In our little bitty corner of the internet. Thanks for sharing that, Taryn.
And can I try and answer Matt C's question real quick?
Yeah, go.
So I think the thing that is different for Gen Z, and like I'm like on the cusp, like I'm 33, so you could probably consider me a millennial depending on where
Zillennial.
Zillennial. There you go. I think the biggest difference is just awareness, from what I've seen, of just like older generations don't seem to be aware of the diversity of stuff that's happening online and the severity of some of the things that are happening online. And I don't know, maybe that's a good thing, because there's some dark corners, just to give some context of that. So there was a dust up between Destiny and Keffels a little while back. And she was trying to accuse one site of posting docs of her, and it wasn't that one, it was a different one, and I found it just out of curiosity, and it's really chilling to go onto a website that doesn't have any discussion, doesn't have any rhetoric. It's just names, addresses, phone numbers. That's it.
Totally.
Man, I can say that for me, like I've been deeply influenced by Gen Z. Not like, I mean, I talk about Redeem Zoomer on my channel a lot. You guys, my friendship with Joseph, I've got a friend here in town, and like I have been influenced by you guys, and I don't know, like, is that me? Is that the cringe thing of, oh, I'm trying to be young? But it has more to do with what Joseph talked about. Like, are you going to be a dink or whatever? I don't even know. I don't even know what that.
Dual income, no kids.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no. Opposite, right? Actually, right now. But I think there's that. But then I guess there's this other thing about he was just kind of pointing at, I mean, a type of confidence that to be, you know, even to the namesake of the channel, which was kind of by accident, but like to be truly me in this world, like, is to project something like I think Joseph was talking about agency, and I don't know, like I see a spirit of that in your generation that is much different than kind of like the mainstream millennial thing that was going on. Because yeah, I do know people that don't want to have more than one kid because there's, you know, global warming, and don't want to have, or like and you know, or you're aging out, like someone said, there's that happens too. And because, you know, of narrative, so that's affected, you know, my generation. And even I think, like, to that point about what changed Charlie, you know, having a son impacted me differently than having daughters. Not that it, but it did, related to what does it mean to be a man in this world. So that's kind of some of the stuff, and I don't know, related to that. Are y'all seeing anything else here in the chat?
I'm seeing William Branch talk a lot of smack. That's all I know. He wants to get in the ring, I think,
the
with
Generation
Noah.
Wars.
He's saying, he's throwing some mad insults.
So I want to make clear my point earlier, because I think it might have gotten misinterpreted. I'm saying that if you are absolutely against having children, you know, when you're reaching around 30, I think that is a bad sign that you are maybe not going to turn around your view entirely. But if you're already interested in having children at 30, I don't think that's a problematic thing at all. Like that, like, you have plenty of time. But it's when you turn around, like when you have the opposite, and you need to go the opposite direction. That's a big deal, especially if you're a part of a partnership, right? Or a marriage, or whatever that looks like in your life. Like, now you're dealing with two people's opinions. It's another thing entirely if you're not on board with that.
I'm going to go up. I've had Jacob on the channel before. He was on Paul's live stream. I'm trying to find his comment. I don't know if StreamYard has to load up more, because this, you know, this has been a very alive chat. This has been there's a lot of people, you know, watching. And so I'm really thankful for everyone that, obviously, this, like, the saliency of doing something for Charlie Kirk right now is going to get attention. And I just want to acknowledge that, you know, so, and that's a reality that I know that, but I don't know what to do with this kind of agency. Like, do you do something, and is it, oh, well, this is going to get me attention, this is going to get me clicks, this is going to get me blah blah blahs, or is there an actual, and maybe, or who's to say, could this be good? Could it be helpful to allow perspective and a conversation to take place, you know, and to provide a space for that, and these kind of multiple levels that we talk about with, like, the quote unquote hive mind in the chat, and then having a conversation up here, and then the in between. And of course, I made a decision not to do a full on TLC thing, you know, like I'm doing my own thing, but he was making kind of the Charlie, you know, Charlie represents me as a white person or something. Charlie represents me. And, you know, I do think that America is going to have to grapple with that, because I think that that's the question of multiculturalism in our culture and all these kinds of things. Like, is it okay to be me? Is it okay to be us? Because even in this, you know, whatever we are here, you know, I actually pass as Hispanic apparently as a nurse, because I get asked if I can speak Spanish all the time.
Well, there's definitely, Christian, there's definitely something that is happening with identity, and it's the hand is being forced, basically, because you have the trans community has a very strong sense of identity, super strong, super patriotic, I guess, of their, you know,
with a flag, you know, and with a culture and everything,
right? And it's just kind of the thing in the room that no one really wants to talk about, or maybe no one's really capable of talking about it, is that, you know, Charlie was like kind of that American waspy, preppy, cool ideal of the faithful guy with the family, and he's also white, just like the people that, you know, were the founding stock of the country. And so I think there's a lot of attention that is brought on that, and you can't really point that out without getting called all sorts of things. And I guess I'm just trying to say is that how identity gets integrated is going to be the main question of the hour, because it's going to be necessitated, especially if there's more violence that is you know, done by a seeming, you know, vanguard of trans rights, which this is what it seems like it was.
Do y'all know, it's crazy, the question he was being asked whenever he was shot was basically about gun violence and his comments about trans, like, and a trend based on that. I mean, that is unreal. I don't even know, but you know, it's so
did you get a chance to watch the guy who was the one asking the question? Okay.
Yeah, that's what was an incredible interview. You know, charitable by all accounts, I think, from my perspective. But I think the thing that's so Tim Keller, one of his last interviews by Carey Nieuwhof, said that if he knew he was dying, and he said that if he could write another book, it was going to be on identity. And so I think that is one point, but like the LGBTQ, like that they were already asking this question that I don't think the culture was even ready to understand. And then you have now the deep right, the massive throwback against that. It is intense, and I think that maybe on the underside of the anxieties lie this question, and it is, well, it's upsetting, I think, and it's intense.
Well, I think.
Let me just add, because there's also the Christian identity now was thrust to the salience of the moment too. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going to go with it. I think the martyrdom, that kind of image kind of calls a question, right? It basically says there are a few different responses. One of them is, you know, hide, right? Like hide or change your identity or go somewhere else. Like, don't do this because it's dangerous. That's one reaction that you can take. The other reaction is basically, let's start a war. That's the Civil War kind of frame. That's the worldly martyr. That's like why you know, Rome was scared of setting up a martyr. Like, there was like certain things, like they wanted to make sure that it was very clear that, you know, we're going to crucify people because we want to show like how far we're going to go with this. And then you have the kind of Christian response, which is the bizarre one, right? But it's the one that has kind of worked throughout history, which is kind of dig your heels in and keep doing what you're doing, and don't fall into the trap of meeting like violence for violence. Like, no, like you're gonna keep doing this, and that's what you saw, I think, with everybody's kind of talking about this. I've been seeing in the comments, I've been seeing tweets about it, that like church was busy, like at a lot of people's like places of worship, like they saw significantly more people. And I'm going to assume, I don't know, I'm going to assume there's going to be a lot more young people there, or people, I've heard stories of people who, I haven't gone to church in 20 years, in 15 years, and I decided to go to church for the first time. And I think that question got called, and I think the person who murdered Charlie Kirk was hoping for a different response to a certain extent. And I think this is the response that's the best one, which is, like maybe we need to, take this as an opportunity to lean into Christ and doing that.
No, and I think everyone's worried that the right is going to have this like Maccabean zealotry of we're not going to transform Rome by dying. We're going to transform Rome by conquest, like an expansionist conquering project, and actually enact that out. But I think
I link that to the people kind of canceling, the public cancellation. That is the Maccabean sense. It's like we were going to kick out the people who are obviously breaking the taboo wherever we can find them. Even if it's at, a local construction company or at a like Wild Wings, right? Like we're going to do that. And it doesn't seem to like the right answer, but I think that we're seeing some of that.
Well, what's really interesting is, sorry to hijack it. I just got to throw this out. What's really interesting, the reason why I brought him up before was kind of return to this. Nick Fuentes, his live stream that he did, in honor of Charlie Kirk, it has 2 million views on it, and it's on Rumble. Who goes to Rumble to watch anything? And he had about, I think, 175,000 people at the peak of his stream. And this is somebody who we're, to expect a level of immaturity, trolling, violence, maybe, I don't know. But he basically met the moment, and I was really shocked to basically just see him, and he was advocating for a Christian response of, we need to pray, we need to not return violence with violence, we need to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And but here's the thing, I think it got a lot of people, and it kind of like how Charlie Kirk made believing in the, scripture as something to center their life around was cool again. I think the reason why someone like Nick Fuentes could say that, and it hits harder than, let's say, if Paul Vanderklay said it, I think it's because this is somebody who has said, pretty rough stuff in the past, and he's actually meaning it. And I'm not saying like PVK wouldn't be meaning it, but it's like a different, it's when the moment meeting you, and you're answering it in a way that would be far more beneficial to you to rouse up anger. And it's just really fascinating that was, I think, the response that was called upon. So
if there was ever a moment for him to be who everyone thought he was or is, that was the moment. And instead he turned a different direction in that. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like,
right. Yeah. And it's grabbed a lot of people's attention. And I assume a lot of young men. So,
well, even in chat, Don has the comment, really, Fuentes? That's exactly like the
so
the question.
And I think that he like we talk about whatever visceral kind of dissociated experience that we're having. I honestly can't fathom maybe what he went through those 2 days. having to come face to face with his own animus or his own like thing, and had a choice to make. That itself could. It was nuts because I've watched maybe one or two of his things. I've been on this level for a long time, not on that, but he is kind of starting to pop up in more normal discourse, or the millennial level discourse.
They were talking about him on Bill Maher.
Wow,
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. And for like, I listened to his gospel presentation, and it was quite striking, at least from my perspective. And that was pretty crazy considering what I kind of had known and heard of him, and probably what was pretty accurate, at least, as that's kind of come up through me kind of hearing certain things that he'd been talking about. So yeah, I think that was interesting. Afriel or Noah, were you about to say something? I can't remember. Or was there a comment or something somebody said?
There was something I was going to say, but I don't remember what it was.
Oh, I'm so
How about
sorry.
this one? How about this one, Joseph? You want to take that one?
Oh, yes. Yeah. No. Well, this is something I was saying backstage, is that liturgically we commemorate the elevation of the Holy Cross, and it's crazy. It's freakish that this day would happen on the Sunday when everyone's coming back to church, I guess, in response to this tragedy, and kind of a moment of reflection on it, that it is the Christian answer to, suffer evil and to pray for those who persecute you. And it's literally a feast day about that, about the subverting the expectations, subverting the, in the epistle reading today, St. Paul is, doing his classic, 1 Corinthians about, to the Jews seek a sign and the Greeks seek wisdom. And I preach them Christ crucified. And it's like, this kind of plays into the whole, age of debate being the turning point is gone on that. We're past that now, where it's about actions are speaking louder than words. And that's a tired thing to say, but it really is. Just like the action of shooting Charlie Kirk spoke louder than anyone who debated him in the past did. Just like him, dying, and then everyone is gathering in prayer and not rioting and stirring up violence. I don't know. There's something really powerful there. I think there's something providential there. Something to think about.
The let's see here. Just looking at my notes. Did Joseph? I know you brought some notes. Was there some things we haven't covered that kind of you?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah. Here's my notes. I came prepared. I did my homework. I think a lot of it has been. Oh well, I guess one thing that we'll say, just because it's on topic. The early church, right? They would suffer what we would just blatantly look at as martyrdom for refusing to sacrifice to Caesar or something, right? But in the reality of that late antique Roman Empire, this wasn't just a religious thing. I mean, the religious and the political were intertwined together, like they always are. And by not sacrificing to Caesar, that's like a political statement just as much as a religious one. And I just find it interesting, the you had the place in the martyrdom of the early Christians where there were, these Christians that were running around and trying to wake people from this and scream, Caesar is not God. He's just a human. There was a place for that. there were martyrs that did that, right? But there were also countless Christians that faithfully just met in silence and quiet and hidden from all this. And I think that's kind of maybe a lesson to be learned through all this is people don't need to go out running around and not everybody, I guess. Not everybody needs to go running around fighting against what they perceive in the culture, in the sense of, I don't think it's everyone's place to run out and be like, there's only two genders, you'll never be a woman. This sort of combated thing. I think there is a place for that. Don't get me wrong. But I think that's not for everybody. I think for the vast majority of people, it's probably a place of true and honest prayer and suffering any evil that befalls you. If people find out that you believe that, there's a man and a woman and that's it, and you suffer wrong for it, thanks be to God. But I think there's maybe something in the early, we have to look to the early church for this weird time we find ourselves in, the death of Christendom and the transition to something else. It's just feels really analogous. So
this is a good one. Persecution is not getting a permit to preach in a park to most but maybe for a few. Yeah. So I'm trying to follow along some comments here. Let's see. I'm just going to put out this prompt to everyone out there in the comment section and people watching. Maybe you haven't commented and you're just lurking or whatever. But if you have a question or something that an angle on this conversation that you're interested in us kind of, taking in kind of this part of the stream, go ahead and
I have something, kind of on that vein of the reason why I wanted to speak about it on stream yesterday and then again today was there's a lot of things that I'm thinking that I'm not hearing from anybody else. And I think that that's the case for plenty of people, but I think that it's important to try and voice those thoughts where and when you can, where and when it makes sense, because that's how you actually make sense of the world, is by having people who are not necessarily on board with everything that's being said in one particular domain. You're not going to have a full picture of what everyone believes unless you have enough of a sampling from a whole bunch of different people with different beliefs to actually start to get a proper picture of reality. And so it's also partly your, maybe not obligation, but it's helpful to other people to speak up and say what your thoughts are when they are different. That's how you can help to give that sense-making ability to everybody else around you too.
Yeah, it is to that point. We should not think the era of dialogue and free speech is over. That would break Charlie's heart. One of the most poignant responses to this was Benjamin Boyce's. I don't know if y'all watched his response to this, and he's somebody that has conversations on the internet. He was visibly shaken in his presentation of it, and he was like, "I'm going to continue to try," and it was pretty moving. And what's crazy, I don't even know how. It's hard to even conceptualize even what I'm doing sometimes in this space related to, I was on a stream the other day with Ken Lowry's brother, and we were talking about being in the digital space, kind of what that is. And but this meme of conversation craft, I kind of feel that, and it was kind of, I was talking to my son about this. He's very young, but basically I was acknowledging that, and I'll bring this in as a quote unquote elder millennial perspective. So when I was growing up, if something like this happened, and I was 16 when 9/11 happened, financial crisis, even in the early 90s, I remember Desert Storm being on the television when I was very young. And, I didn't turn on a TV and sit and watch in front of the TV. My kids were either going to hear about this from at school because they don't have social, even my teenagers don't really have social media, or they could hear about it from mom and dad. And so I did have to like figure out, like, I have to tell my kids the news, like this historical news, because we're not just sitting. I don't have Fox. I don't have cable. I don't even try to watch any real news on television. And so, you know, yeah, we talked about dinner. We prayed for his family, and you know, and then I was showing my son some of the, you know, the nice Charlie Kirk things, like about his, you know, things he was saying about his faith, just very simple things. And I'm looking at it, and he's got on these headphones, and he's got this mic in front of him.
Well, that was one of the things that I thought was really poignant that I saw on X, was that this wasn't politician being assassinated coded. This was live streamer on a live stream being assassinated coded.
Right.
Yeah. And as he just briefly said, was he a podcaster, Dad? And then all of a sudden I was kind of like, oh shit. Cause I mean, this is a studio in our garage, you know, and I was like, ooh, you know, so I was like, and I was like, no, you know, he was, he I don't remember what I said, but, you know, he talked about his faith and he talked about the government and different things. But it was a George Janko interview that he was on. And, you know, he was just basically saying something Christian, but so it's kind of weird a little bit, you know, to think about that. And to your point, Afriel. So.
Well, and the implication there being that means that anybody who wants to turn on a camera and a microphone and talk about things online is also potentially a target.
Right. Are we putting ourselves at risk? You know, I mean, imagine a world where that is the case, where any perceived, even, you know, defense or praise of Charlie would be, you know, an impetus for action against you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure if we posted this in some discords, we would get that at this point. And that's why I'm saying to who posted, someone said, you know, we can't stop talking, it will break Charlie's heart. That's understandable, but what is the upper limit to which conversation can be done in some of these things? And in some cases, I have to imagine that there's a limit.
At what point do words themselves constitute action?
Right. Or words become violence. Yeah. Like, this isn't talking about fiscal policy. This isn't talking about who's on the right side of Israel or Palestine. This is ontological issues. So
that was you know, there's a lot of that's been said about what happened in American politics, because I don't even like really the framing of this as like he was killed for his opinions, or he was killed for, like, he was killed. I mean, it feels more like he was killed for beliefs. And I think,
well, those beliefs are in that. Well, that's the thing. It's not this nice bifurcated perspective.
Yeah.
These are intertwined, you know,
and that
necessarily.
Yeah. And so that's one thing that even, like, I think people that would probably not be like considered far left, normie, left of center, and kind of just like some of the podcast bro circuit and stuff. It's like, man, or like when on Rogan, when it happened, it was, who was Charlie Sheen? Is that who he was with? He was with the dude from he was like, man, just getting killed for speaking opinions. And I was like, well, I don't think Charlie would say that he was sharing an opinion. And I think that that's what is so intense, because politics, and this is what you say, like, what's collapsing right now with our kind of, you know, when we became something not quote unquote a Christian nation, or however you want to say this, and is that okay, and all that thing, is that our morals shifted into the political, where there was something, you know, in the Tom Holland sense, or even just the, you know, founding fathers sense, in some kind of there was a well, he's Catholic, well, he's, you know, Protestant, you know, but at the end of the day, like, you can find the same Trinity in those belief systems, and they're I don't know, but then, and people make religious arguments for things Charlie was opposed to, you know, so it's not exactly that simple in a sense. Like, people have theological arguments for the sex and the whatever language we want to put around that. So, but it's, those things have been thrust to the political sphere, and when you take something that foundational and you bring it, you're not talking, like Joseph, like the meme, you're not talking about fiscal policy anymore, and that is pretty dangerous in a way, because you're talking about ultimate reality.
You're talking about what is meaningful, and is there meaning, and what it's showing more and more with Gen Z is there's a divide of, there are people who think life is meaningful and has an intrinsic meaning, and there are people who are just nihilistic, and they just live for the seculum, and they're going to do whatever they can to, you know, make the seculum a better place to be, whatever that is.
And then who's defining that? Are you going to start a cult of Dionysus kind of a thing where pleasure is your highest good?
Right.
Well, it's inherently a religious conversation, right? It becomes that, because we're not talking about politics or policy or any of these things. We're talking about core values, and then disagreements on core values are really difficult to process and to have productively. You have to have space for it, and sometimes, you know, it works out well, and sometimes it goes very poorly in history. That's just,
and that's kind of the problem that we're facing right now, is a lot of the younger generations are losing faith in the ability to come to a political solution to a lot of these problems, because what they're realizing is it is suicidal to grant political power over you to someone who wants to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when it is made very clear, it's not just words. There are actions that are wanting to be taken and will be taken when the opportunity presents itself. It makes it like you don't want to go to the point where you're no longer having dialogue. You don't want that.
Yeah. Well, and this is I know it's going to be annoying for some people because I keep bringing this up. Okay, and I brought it up on apps, not your stream yesterday, but the week before, and it was weirdly timed where it was right as this, where we were coming into this. We're talking about Gen Z radicalization, and I brought up that I was looking into John Brown, and I've been doing this research, and John Brown is kind of at the center of all this in America. Like, he is the example of violent intervention to seek a political end, and for the most part, he's not been vilified or looked down upon in American history. Like, it's the left has very much used him as an idealistic person, right? Because he is somebody who fought against slavery violently, and there hasn't been a response really to it,
because he was on the right side of history for them. So
yeah, well, and from our perspective,
justify the means.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what do we do with that? What do we process with that? Because he's also a religious person, and so there's this kind of another layer or aspect to it, and it's really difficult, and I think it needs a lot of work. But I think that's part of the American DNA that has to be processed at some point, and it's built in there. And is John Brown a saint, or is he someone that we should look at as, you know, someone who was caught up and maybe had his heart was in the right place, but maybe it wasn't executed correctly. Pardon
Well,
my
it's
language,
like the
but-
zealots. It's like the zealots of the late antique Roman Empire.
Yeah.
I would have, that we worshipped a single god, but they, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a point there, Noah.
Yeah.
Well, and it also, you have to keep in mind that our nation was founded on a violent revolution against a corrupt authority. Like, that's the basis of our country.
Right.
It is. I was in a conversation today talking about. It was actually about like church identity, and what happens when we try to like when you don't want to deal with like the story of the church. You just want to like, we're just going to kind of create like this homogenous thing now that's really kind of divorced from maybe the story and the history of that church. And I think that what we're talking about, there's kind of two threads. One's dealing with violence in a general sense, but there's also one that the other one, which is what you said, Noah. This is the kind of bifurcated post, which is the religious sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a sense which in the kind of Tom Holland thesis of the Western civilization is Christian, doesn't know it at this point, is this attempt to kind of homogenize a seculum, like Joseph said, to create just this, is to try to divorce the history from the history from the history, or like we can just like become this utopia that doesn't, where basically everything in our past is anathema, and that's just not gonna go well. There has like, and I think your point, Noah, is very prescient, is like these things have to be reckoned with in a way that cuts through the bullshit. And I don't know. Maybe we've done some of that tonight, but like, it seems it will be a miracle in a way, and and I do believe in them. So I don't know, guys.
No one expected Constantine to adopt Christianity.
Yeah.
That you would have been a laughing stock. It would have been more ridiculous to say that than go to the Jews and say the Messiah was crucified. You never know what's going to happen when prayers and the works.
Well, and the flip was so fast too. Like I look back to kind of the stories I hear about Julian the Apostate, and how he goes to the pagan priest saying like he wants to reinstitute the pagan practice, and he says what the Christians are able to do is that they care for the poor, and it like wins everybody over. Like we should do that, and they laugh at him, and they're like, "That's not what we do. Like, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And it was within like 2 generations. Like he had already seen that the battle had shifted. Like the fabric of what his assumptions were on was not the same anymore.
So that's what it feels like, right?
It feels like the opposite a little bit right now, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe we weren't necessarily in the Constantinian like structure or whatever, that same structure, but there is a sense in which we had this shared structure, and now it's kind of been torn apart, and now we're
trying to LARP our way back to it. But unlike Julian the Apostate, we're not cringe Reddit atheists. Well, we can actually do it because we have God with us if we're praying.
Let's go around and do some final thoughts, if you have any, or just some final words. And I just again want to say thanks to everyone who's been watching tonight, everyone in the comments, and hopefully has felt. I don't know if there's been any moderation going. I don't know if I even have any wrenches out there. Matt C's been hanging. He's got some wrench, but I don't have that many wrenches. So hopefully it hasn't been too crazy. And but yeah, so thanks for that. And let's start again with Afriel. Just any final thoughts, and then I'll kind of close this out.
No final thoughts, but I will shill that we're doing a camp out here in beginning of October. Reach out to me or Noah for details, and we'll hook you up if you're from the Northwest region.
I meant to mention kind of people's place in this is that Afriel and Noah are estuary leaders in the northwestern part of the United States. And as younger men in that movement, however we want to say that, I applaud that. And I think that that's like a responsibility that they've taken up in their life. That is such a positive thing. And then Joseph is going through deacon ordination in the Greek Orthodox Church. And I'm me. But so those are kind of, I just say those as things that these young men are taking upon responsibility in this world and enacting the kind of agency we were talking about. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that and celebrate that. Noah, you got something?
I don't know. I'd say for the most part is if you're inclined at all or moved at all by any of this, I recommend that you, if you feel a call to go to church or to pray more or any of these things, that you would lean into it, and that you would follow that spirit where it takes you. I think that is that's something good, and this is in a time of change like this. I think that's what Charlie would have wanted, and I think that'll be the best thing for most everyone who feels that call. So,
Joseph,
to any fellow Zillennials or honorary millennials or bona fide Zoomers or even Gen Alpha in chat, get involved. If you are not going to be a clergyman, if you're not going to be a full-time dad, go get involved in politics. Join your township supervisor board. We need to be good agents in this world. And if we are prayerful about everything, we do need to be carrying the torch, though, and being leaders. And I don't believe that all things will be solved politically, but I do believe that we need to continue this pattern that we've seen in someone like a Charlie Kirk, who is developing more agency in the world, taking on greater responsibilities. And yes, you can do that in a humble way as the best barber in town or something. But there are also really tangible ways of taking on ownership of your community. And if you're truly a psychopath, go and become a senator or something. I don't know. But anyways, that's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah. Remember, embody. And guys, I just thank you for meeting me here in the digital space to take courage in response to something that is just so wild. And to join me in that, and even just share your experiences and your perspectives to everyone again out there. Thank you for just like a really great chat. And I don't know if I have anything else to add other than I appreciate each one of y'all's words on that so much. And here's what I will say. To Noah's point, and to the go to church, which is this, well, I said this on my very first YouTube video. This is not a church. You can't go to this church, so go to church. But know that the church is not a perfect place, and it will fail. Things will fail you. But to this point, I think that we believe that we do believe that Christ won't ultimately, and you can hold on to that and even stake your life on it. I guess that's what I wanted to add to the go to church. And with that, I'm gonna I'm gonna bump us out tonight, and guys, if y'all hang out backstage, we'll close this thing out back there. So thank you, everybody, and y'all,
Thanks for having us
everyone
on.
else. Have a good night. Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.